Welcome into another Blender tutorial where we're going to take a look at morphing one object into another object using particle systems. In this example here, I am morphing one of my favorite team's logos into another one of their logos. But let's take a look at what we can do in Blender. So starting with a basically blank canvas, I've already deleted the default cube, and we're going to start by hitting Shift A and adding a text, and we'll just make this simple. We'll morph one text into another text. So I'm going to start with truth, tab. I'm going to go over here to font. I'm going to make this center on alignment and center on alignment. I am going to do a Control Alt 0 to center the camera where I'm at. I'm going to hit S and scale this up a bit, and then I'm going to jump up here to fonts, and I'm just going to select a font I have downloaded from a website like 1001 Free Fonts, and we'll choose this guy. And since we're going to be using a particle system, we're going to want to convert this to a mesh. So we're just going to hit right click, convert to mesh. Now, one thing about converting text to mesh is if you hit tab, you'll see we have this horrible mesh layout. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to remesh this. And one thing I've noticed about the remesh modifier is it doesn't respond to flat objects very well. So we're going to hit tab to go into edit mode. We're going to hit A to select everything. I'm going to hit E for extrude, and I'm just going to take this out just a little bit, and I'm going to tab back out of this. I'm going to hit 7 to go back to the view I want, and I'm going to jump up here to modifiers. I'm going to hit add modifier. I want to remesh it. I'm going to select sharp, uncheck remove disconnected, and then we're going to up this octet depth till we get the kind of view we want. And for me, 8 looks like where I want it to be. I'm going to hit apply. And now if you look, when we hit tab, it's a much cleaner mesh. So we're going to tab back out of that. And to begin our project, we're going to jump over to Object, Quick Effects, and Quick Explode. And you'll see it went ahead and added the explode modifier for us, and we have a particle system as well. But before we do that, I want us to jump over to the shading, and this is something that will come back to bite us later. When you do that explode effect, it adds some shaders we don't want, so we're going to select all of these guys, hit delete, and then connect BSDF to surface. And we can go ahead and pick a color while we're in here, and I'm going to pick the color green because, being a UAV Blazer fan, that is one of my favorite colors. So we're going to jump back over to the layout, and with this particle system, we're going to want several particles to make it smoothly move into the other, and I'm going to select about 30,000 particles. I'm going to go to velocity, and I'm going to change normal to 0 because I don't want this to move. I'm going to get rid of randomize because we are in a minute going to set up a very structured way of dealing with this. I also want to do field weights, and I want to make sure that gravity is 0. So we have gravity, random, and normal all set to 0. And we're going to jump back up here, and I'm going to hit refresh. And if we now look at our timeline, we'll see we won't see anything because I forgot to say I want this guy to start at 10. I want him to end at 110 because I'm going to let him go 100 frames, so that'd be 110. And we'll just leave the lifetime at 50. And then the other thing I forgot to do back here is I want to remove cut edges. and I only want this to be visible when it's unborn, which means before it starts its particle system, and when it's alive. The other thing is, now that I've turned off all the field weights, I need to add something that is going to make these particles move, and so I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to add a force field, and I'm going to add a turbulence, and I'm going to jump down here to here we go. Jump down here to the physics properties, and I'm going to change the strength to 2. The other thing is, as you saw in mine, I kind of let it explode from left to right, and so the way we're going to do that is we're going to click back on here, and we're going to go back to this physics tab. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we are going to go to textures. We want to add a new texture. We're going to jump over to the texture that we just created, and we're going to select blend, and we're going to, under colors, we're going to check color ramp. And so what that does now is it's going to let it go left to right. If we wanted to go right to left, we could just flip the 2 sliders. So let's go back here. Let's go back to our physics. Let's tell it to refresh again, and we're going to hit space, and as you can see, it is now exploding left to right. So what do we do to get it to morph into the other words? So scroll back here so we can have a frame of reference. I'm going to hit Shift A again. I'm going to add another text. I'm going to hit Tab, and I am going to hit Grace. We'll let truth morph into Grace. I'm going to go under fonts again. I am going to select the same font that I used for the first word, just for consistency, and I am also going to set the alignment the same as the other one, where it's center and center, and then I am going to scale these guys to try to get them to match almost as much as they can. Just like we did before, we are going to right click and we're going to convert this to a mesh. I'm going to tilt here a little bit. I'm going to tab. I'm going to hit A to select everything. I'm going to hit E to extrude, and then with this I'm going to try to get it to match as much as possible the depth of the previous letters. I'm going to hit tab again. 7 to get back to the view I want. Just like before, we are going to add a remesh modifier to get this to be a better mesh. We're going to hit sharp, remove disconnected. We're going to uncheck that, and we're going to jump back up probably to 8 octics, just like we did before. And we are going to apply that modifier. And again, you see we now have a better, cleaner mesh. Again, we're going to hit Object, Quick Effects, Quick Explode. Just like the previous one, we're going to jump over here to shading for a minute. I want to get rid of these extra shaders that were added that I don't want. And I'm going to again connect BSDF to surface, and I'm going to set my color to a green, and then we'll go back to layout. And this one we're going to set up a little similar to what we did with the other one, but we're going to have to do a few things different. So we're going to go back into the particle system again. We're going to do 30,000 again, because we want what we're coming from to what we're going to have the same number of particles to interact with. Again, we're going to hit normal to 0, randomize to 0. We're going to go down to gravity. We're going to set it to 0. and we're going to go down and we're going to add that exact same texture to this guy. So if we now were, I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah, let's go back to here. Scroll back up. We want this guy to come alive about the same time that the other one goes dead. So we started at 10 and the particles live 50 frames, so we're going to start this guy at 60 and we're going to go 100, so that's going to give us 160. Alright, so now if we do particles starting at 160 is the last particle that will be born, and its lifetime is 50, that's going to be 210. So let's just go ahead and make the end of our animation 220. We've now set this up exactly like the other one. So we're going to go here, we're going to hit refresh, and if we hit play, we're going to see our first guy destroy, and then our second guy starts to destroy, but they're not connected in any way. So let's stop this guy from playing. And I did forget that we want to turn off cut edges. Now we're going to relate these two to each other. So in the one that we're going to, in this case it is the second text 001, we are going to make a couple of changes. So under physics, we're not going to use Newtonian, we're going to change it to keyed. Now we got to set those key relationships. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit add, and when we look at the object, the key is the first text object. Then we're going to add the second key, which is the second text object. So now these particles have a relationship with one another. And so if we go back and we hit refresh again, we go to our other one, we hit refresh again, we're going to see that when they explode, they're going to key off of each other. But we're still not getting this effect that we want. And that's because we have one last thing that we need to do to build this relationship. And that is in the first text, like I said, we want it to be visible before the particles are born, which means that starting text, and we want it visible as the particles are moving. But we didn't check dead because once the particles die, we don't want to see them anymore. However, when we look at our second text, we want to do the exact opposite. So again, we want to see them when they're alive. We don't want to see it before they become particles because we want that second text to start invisible. But we do want it to appear when it's dead. So let's refresh this guy. Let's go all the way back and let's hit play. And so what you'll see now is as text dies, grace is born from those particles, and we get the effect we want. So I'm going to hit pause, and I am going to jump up here, and I'm going to get us into our rendered view. I am going to click this to get rid of our guidelines, and I'm going to jump up here to the world setting so that we can make this background black so it pops just a little bit more. And so this is what our rendered look would look like. So we're going to hit play, and let's watch as truth dissolves, the particles morph in to the word grace. And that's our quick and easy transition from one object to another. This will work for any object. As you saw in my example, it worked for 2 different logos. We could do boxes, we could do toruses or spheres. The trick is going to be we just got to make sure that the object that we are wanting to morph into another object has enough vertices. So like if you started with a plane, you would want to subdivide it many times. Even if you had a torus, you would want to subdivide it many times, because we're talking about using close to 30,000 particles. Now at this point, if we wanted to, we look up here at our render settings. I'm doing this in Eevee. Typically I use ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, and motion blur. I'm going to hit 0 here so we can see our what our camera view will be when we render this. We're going to jump down here. I'm going to jump over here to, I want to get out of temp here. I'm going to go to my D drive, and I'm going to go to Blender, and this will work right here. So we'll do blend morph, and I'm going to hit accept, and I'm going to do this as an FFmpeg. I'm going to click the 3 dots to, I'm going to click the 3 dots and do MP4, and then I am ready to go to just hit render animation, and we're off to the races on rendering our new product. I hope this is something that will be useful to you at transitioning objects between one another. I hope you have fun with it. Please comment with the final product of pictures and or animation you make using this technique. We'd appreciate if you would click subscribe.